Ever heard somebody say, when you do something good, do it in secret? Have you ever heard the saying, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing? Seems kind of like a weird statement, right? But actually, the Bible talks about doing good deeds in private and that there's a reason for it. So today in the Bible Study Live, I want to go through a section of scripture that talks about doing good deeds and why perhaps we should focus on doing those things secretly instead of in public. So let's dig into the scriptures. Today we're going to read from Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, and we're going to read from the Christian Standard Bible. So here we go. It says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others, to be seen by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father in heaven. So when you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be applauded by people. Truly, I tell you, they have their reward. But when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." Let's break these scriptures down piece by piece and talk about what it actually means. So let's start with verse 1. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. What does that mean? Well, practicing your righteousness was a way of saying, like, your charitable giving, doing something nice for others in need. So Jesus starts out right here by saying, look, when you do something good for somebody else, it says, he says, be careful. That's interesting. He says, be careful not to do this in front of others to be seen by them. Now, there's something very important here. He's often, almost every time when we see Jesus giving like a command like this, he's talking about something that relates to the heart. So when he says don't do it in front of other people, he's not saying like, well, if you're pulling off the highway ramp and you see somebody in need, you can't give them any money because other people might see. That's not what that means. If you read the sentence, he says, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. What is he saying? Listen, when you're giving to somebody, when you're doing something nice, when you're offering charity to somebody in need, make sure that you've got your heart in the right place when you're doing it. Are you doing it because you want to take care of the person? Or are you doing it because you think you'll get some benefit by somebody else seeing what you're doing? So Jesus is saying, be sure when you're doing something nice, when you're doing something benevolent, when you're trying to offer kindness, make sure you've got the right heart behind it. That you're not doing it so that somebody else will see you and give you a reward, right? So that you're not doing it for the attaboys and the high fives. Why does he say that? Well, it continues to say, otherwise you'll have no reward with your Father in heaven. Now you might be like, well, wait a minute. If I do something nice for somebody and somebody else says, good job, God's not going to be happy with me? Not exactly. So let's just put it into plain English. If you do something so that someone else will give you kudos, basically Jesus is saying, well, you don't need to hear high five, great job from God because you got the praise you were looking for. You wanted men to say congratulations, good job, you did nice. Well, they got it. They did it. They saw it. They gave you the high fives. So you don't need God to. Now, this is important because what Jesus is really speaking to is, are we doing stuff because we want to be like God and please God, or are we doing stuff because we want to get the praise of people? He goes on, he says, all right, so is a continuation. So he's saying, be careful not to do this to get praise from people, or that praise is all the reward you're going to get. He says, so when you give to the poor, don't sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and streets to be applauded by people. It's weird to say don't sound a trumpet. Why would he say that? Well, back in those days when an actor would take a stage, okay, when somebody would take the stage to put on a show in Rome or something like that, often people were in masks. And it wasn't like today where they'd zoom in on the Jumbotron or they could say, and now coming to the stage, Hugh Jackman. No, what would happen was you wouldn't know who the main actor was because you wouldn't recognize them. It wasn't like their face was all over social media and TV. People would often wear masks during plays. So when the star of the show, the main actor, would take the stage, they would sound a trumpet. That would let the audience know, aha, the main actor's taking the stage. So what Jesus is basically saying here is, look, when you're giving to the poor, don't act. Don't be an actor. Don't take the stage and be a play actor to let everybody know the hero is here to save the day with this charitable giving. What he's saying is, look, no, that's what the hypocrites do. That's what the people that talk a good talk but don't really walk the walk, don't really have their heart aligned with God. That's what they do. They do it so they can get praise and adoration from humans. So Jesus is saying, so when you do this giving, when you're giving to the poor, when you're helping them out, don't make an ordeal out of it. Don't be a play actor. Don't try and get attention to be applauded by people. He says, remember, again, he says, look, they've gotten their reward. He's saying the applause from the people, good job being nice. That's reward. That's the reward you were looking for, and that's the one you got. He says, but when you give to the poor, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. What? Don't let your left hand know what your... Jesus is saying, Jesus is speaking to our human nature. We have this nature about us that when other people praise us, it feels good. And of course it does, right? We all love having that feeling of, man, I got recognized for what I do, right? Even at work, man, I want people to recognize my contributions at work. When it's doing stuff at church, it feels good to have someone acknowledge you. Hey, thanks for helping. Thanks for serving. But what Jesus is saying here is, are you doing that good deed for the thanks? Or are you doing it out of a generous giving heart because you want to love on people and you want to help people? Jesus is saying it's such a big deal to make sure that we don't let our heart get caught up in the praise of others. It's such a big deal. He's like, don't even let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Basically, Jesus, it almost seems like he's saying, look, don't plan your good deed in a way that it could be misconstrued by somebody else. He's saying, be so secretive about the good you're doing that even your own left side doesn't realize what your right side's doing. That's insane sometimes to think about, right? Like, wait, it's got to be that secret? But Jesus is saying, it seems like Jesus is saying, man, our hearts have this tendency that if we start getting praise from others, we like it so much, we want to do more just so we can get more reward, get more praise, get more, you did good on this one, my friend. But Jesus is saying, look, when you make such a point to avoid the praise of man for the charity that you give, your Father in heaven, he sees that secret. He sees that thing you did in secret, and he's got a reward waiting for you. Now, there is, of course, the danger of going, well, I'm going to do it so that God will reward me. And God sees our hearts. And it seems like Jesus isn't saying, now don't do it for God to reward you either. But Jesus is saying in these words, from what we read, hey, look, I want you to get your heart right and just do for people for the sake of doing for people. Care for people for the sake of loving people. Be like your Father in heaven. The scriptures tell us that even when we were God's enemies, he saved us. He did for us when we could do nothing in return for him. And this seems like Jesus' way of saying, now pay it forward. Do for others in a way that no one could give you kudos. Do for others in a way that the only person that'll know you did it is God. And trust me, he's got a great reward for you in heaven. Now, here's the amazing thing, by the way. It doesn't say that the reward is tied to the good deed you do. It doesn't say, the bigger the good deed, the bigger the reward from God. What Jesus is basically saying is, look, heaven's already. Like when we read this, it's like you realize you've got a reward waiting for you in heaven. You've got eternity because of what Christ did for you. My friends, Jesus died for us. He gave us eternity. Not only were we saved from hell, right? When Jesus died on the cross, not only did he overcome darkness, but he also opened the door for eternity. So not only did Jesus rescue us from the darkness, he opened the door to eternity so we could have that relationship with God. That reward is waiting for us. And Jesus is saying that's reward enough. What God has in store for you and I is so great, we don't even need the praise of people on earth. Remember, the next time you go to give, the next time you go to do something nice, check your heart first and say, why am I doing this? Is it because I genuinely want to help them, or is it because I want somebody else to high five me? Now, why would I bring this stuff up? Well, as I close, I'll bring it up because of this. I see a lot of stuff on social media where people do nice stuff for others, and I think it's cool, and I think it encourages other people to do nice things. But as you go to do nice things, ask yourself, if you're going to put it on social media or something like that, is there a way that you can encourage others to do that nice thing without doing it in a way that could draw attention to ourselves? There's some good opportunity there to encourage people. We can create challenges and things like that to encourage folks to step out, make a difference in the world. Just make sure as we're doing it that you're giving God the glory, that you're not taking credit for yourself, that you're encouraging people to do good, be good, live good, love good, but not so that they'll high five you and me, but more so that they'll say, man, I want to go do good in this world. And thank you, God, for doing good for me. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Bible Study Live. I will see you